Okay. So, update. I got all the screws. These are size 20 Torx screws, or cap screws. I don't know what the cap screw size is. It's probably about a 7 or an 8 millimeter. If you have a nut driver of 7 or 8 millimeter size, it's pretty small, but it's also got a Torx setting in there, and it's a Torx 20. So there's one next to the glove compartment. Move on down here for number 2. And that one is in a recess spot that is covered up by this little plug. So I'm going to stick this plug in now. Let's see the back side of this. It shows you the configuration. It just sort of snaps in. So, let's see if there's any kind of a way. It looks better. It probably is, but it's not apparent to me, so I'm just going to snap that in just like that. Now it's snapped in.
Okay, moving up front. Under the hood. And to wrap this thing up, here is my speedometer cable coming up next to the power brake booster, the vacuum booster. It comes out, let's see, how can I point to that? Take a little screwdriver here. The tip of the screwdriver is, I'll wiggle it around. That's where it comes out of the firewall, and then follows this course down here all the way to the end, and that's dangling free. And I'm going to stick it down in there a little bit because I'll show you what it connects to and how it connects. This is a little pin. It's like a little circlip. Let's see, there we go. You get a picture of that. In my finger there, it looks like a little, kind of like just a squiggly pin. Specialized, and it will hold this thing in place, kind of like at some point, I'm not sure exactly where, it'll kind of click through this and hold it into a retainer down below. See how that pulls and clicks into place. We'll look at that more carefully down there at the bottom, but that's just for starters to show you what we're dealing with. This end of the speedometer cable goes into the transmission case, or maybe it goes into a speed sensor, I'm not sure which, but it's down there close to the transmission. So let's head down that way and see what it looks like down there. The spring clip fits in a little slot right through this thing, kind of like that. Okay. See how that goes through? And it goes through some more, right out the other end. To get the speedometer cable out, and imagine the speedometer cable is down in there, you kind of have to pull this out so that the widest part is lined up with the circumference of the housing. When it's installed, it's kind of offset a little bit, so it pinches and holds the speedometer cable in place. But when you pull it out, you'll want to just pull it partly, because it'll expand. The little design of these little hooks on this end is such that when you pull it out, it expands the spring a little bit, the spring clip a little bit. And expands it enough where you can wiggle the speedometer cable out. What's really hard to do is to pull this clip all the way out. I didn't have much luck doing that, but maybe you'll have better luck if you can just pull the clip completely out. Then naturally the speedometer cable will come free. But I just pulled it part way out, enough so that I could wiggle the speedometer cable free. So I'm going to put it partly in, and then push this in. I got the cable in its place, and I got that little circlip. It's this thing right here. And what I did was to put it about in the position. I put the circlip without the speedometer cable in the middle there. I removed the speedometer cable, put the little circlip through its little cutting in this brown, I think that's a brown plastic housing. So I positioned the clip so that I could easily push down the speedometer cable right through the widest part of the clip into the center of that housing that connects to the transmission. And it seemed to just pop right in. To get it out, I would just pull this up and it'll pop right out. And they say don't put a lot of force on this plastic housing that holds this clip because they break so easily. They meaning the plastic housing breaks very easily. So I didn't put a lot of pressure on this, and not sure that that's supposed to be out as far as it is. If it goes in another 1/4 of an inch, then the end of the clip will pop out a 1/4 of an inch. So something's going to stick out on this. It's either going to be this end or this end that sticks out, but it seems to stay in there the way it is, and so I'm going to leave it that way with that much of the ring sticking out. But I'll do some more research on that to see if that's supposed to be sticking out that far, and I'll drive with it and see if it's noisy or rattles or pops out. If it pops out, then I'll lose my speedometer. But I'll know exactly where to go to reinstall that. But that's the method and technique for detaching and reattaching the speedometer cable at the transmission end. Now I'm going to put the battery in. The little battery tray goes in there. That gets connected at that point. Let's see, that point. And that point. So there are 4 points where the battery tray would be connected down in there. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I've got 3 of the bolts there, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 2 more floating around here. I've got to find them. So let me do that. Okay, so the battery's back in. The tray's back in underneath the battery. The battery's back in. That's a simple matter of connecting the positive post, negative post, a little tie down, and tie down on each side of the battery. And then I got into the car, started it up, turned on my parking lights, and then adjusted the intensity control here on the dashboard to show you that now over there in the hot water gauge, which was impossible to read at night, we now have some indicator lights. Life is good. So I should have 4 good bulbs in there now, where I only had 1 before over on the left side, so I'm good with this. Let me now show you. So let me turn off the lights, turn off the engine, shut the door to stop the noise, and let me show you all of that work was to replace these bulbs. The new ones were GE 194, General Electric 194s. So I bought some Sylvania equivalents, I think. The offenders were these three. The fourth one was not an offender, but I thought, well, since I'm in there, and three of them have already gone, the odds are against this last survivor. So I went ahead and got 4 new bulbs and replaced them. You'll notice when I lay these up side by side, you can see which one is still the good one. The smoked bulbs are the 3 on the right. The one on the left is still a good bulb, but with filaments in there, they are long life instrument lights, but with the filaments, these have probably been in place since the time this car was built back in 1993. So I figure that with this many years, and 3 burned out, it's time to replace the 4th one. So I did. Got a couple of packs of 194s, Sylvania 194s, but the GE 194 is what it calls for, long life instrument panel lights. And my job is now finished.